Welcome to today's Masterclass from Revenue Coach. This session is being recorded live on LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube, and it's being recorded for future viewing. I'm Alistair Cole, your host for the session and co-founder and CEO of Revenue Coach, which is a SaaS coaching platform that demystifies the sales process for founders and accelerates startup growth. You can sign up for free at revenuecoach.ai, and there's a link in the chat. This is our 8th masterclass in a new series where we're exploring some of the biggest challenges in the workplace for sales professionals. And today's topic is the gift of pain. And our special guest is Tony Kitchens, author, entrepreneur, and philanthropist, who's coming live from Atlanta, Georgia. Tony has generated $110 million in revenue and serviced some of the world's largest corporations. He believes that mental toughness is the secret to a life of success, and that we can all change our perspectives on fear, pain, and challenges and use them as fuel to create amazing lives. Welcome, Tony.
We appreciate it.
Having spent the last 2 or 3 years building businesses on my own, I've experienced quite a lot of pain, Tony. Pain of perceived failure, unquestionably rejection, and also in my personal life in the last couple of years, 2 pretty serious bereavements. In the world of so it feels very, very real, very raw pain. How about you? What are the biggest business pains that you've experienced in your career?
There are probably too many to count, but one thing that I would say, looking back, is creating businesses and being in a position where you don't have as much control as you believe you do. And I think coming to that realization and the effects of it was very painful. When you grow a successful company and then outside factors harm you, or you're harmed by them, I should say, and there's nothing you can do to control that. I think that's a very sobering, very painful thing that a lot of founders, a lot of business owners face. And the question is, can we even prepare for those things? Can we even build up systems and processes to alleviate potential pain when we face those things? I think that's probably one of the biggest ones. Yeah,
I've heard you talk before about making sure that your house is not prepared for pain. That one is put the right things in place to stop that happening. And I guess turn it from something negative into something positive. How is that possible? What are the steps that people on this call should take to prepare themselves, against feeling that pain?
Yeah, I think, one experience that I had in personal life in 2017, when I lived in Puerto Rico, we had this massive Hurricane Maria, that the eye of the storm went right over our house. 4,000 people died that night and the following weeks. It was a very devastating storm. When we first moved to the island back about 11 years ago, one of the first things I did was to try to stormproof the home, because on any small island, there's always a potential for hurricanes. So I went out, got storm shutters installed on every window and every door. Made sure that we had provisions, we had bottled water in storage, we had all of the supplies we needed, flashlights and extra batteries, etc. Big generator. We prepared as much as we could based on the situations that could happen on an island. And Alistair, don't we do that in life? We should prepare as much as we can for the environment, whether it's business or our personal lives. The thing that I learned after that storm was no matter how prepared I was, those outside forces, that storm, the hurricane, which had tornadoes in the middle of it, which was terrible, there was nothing that we could do to control that. However, we came out very well after that storm. Some of our neighbors were really devastated because they didn't put measures in place. They were more concerned with cosmetics. I don't want storm shutters on my windows. And these are people that had means to be able to put measures in place, but there was an assumption there that it wouldn't happen to them. And if you take that example and apply it to business and life, and you start looking at that, you say to yourself, I have to do as much as I physically can, whether it's sales, entrepreneurship, and life, to prepare for uncertainty. But you can't control it from coming into your life. And I think that's the most important lesson. We have to do as much as we can while we have the energy and the resources to provide a better solution for the things that can come about. And it takes a lot of determination, and it also takes a lot of creative thinking, because we get so tied up in life that many times we're just on autopilot. We wake up every day, we go through these routines, and we just assume if we get up, the sun is going to come up. It doesn't always happen that way.
So I guess forewarned is forearmed, right? People on this call, listening live or watching it recorded back, business professionals, sales professionals. What can a salesperson do practically? Like your hurricane example. What can they practically do in their working week in order to prevent some of those classic painful things that happen to salespeople, like missing targets, rejected by would-be sellers? What are the practical things people can do?
I think the first thing is creating a mindset and understanding that if you are an employee, your job is not as secure as you may believe. I think that's the first thing. If you're an entrepreneur, you probably are even more aware that your business is not as secure as you may want it to be. So if I'm a salesperson working for a corporation, the first thing that I would do is realize that it's a temporary position. It's temporary until you miss your numbers, until that company decides to make a change and go in a different direction. It doesn't include you or your sales team or the type of team. I would understand that it's a temporary position. And as I did sell, and as I'm selling, I would really focus on saving as much money as I can for the inevitable. I've been around a lot of salespeople in life, and some of them are totally blindsided when they lose their jobs, as if they never imagined that would happen. So the first thing I would say is be very conscious and aware that it's all temporary. The second thing I would do is also understand that it may not be the solution or service that you're providing today that's going to get you to your ultimate goal. If you look at your dream, your goals, those are destinations. Your company, your job as a salesperson is literally just a vehicle to get you to that destination. And if we're so dedicated to the vehicle, we lose track of the destination or the goal. And that's one of the most devastating things you can do. So if you are in a position where you lose a job or you lose a client as a business owner, it's not the end of the world, because your goal is way more important than that one client, or way more important than that one job. So we have to really stay focused. But as far as salespeople are concerned, one, understanding that this is not a permanent position that you are in. The second thing is save as much money as you can for a rainy day, because it rains on the just and the unjust, meaning you could be an awesome salesperson. You can be an awesome salesperson, but if that company decides to go in a different direction, there's nothing you can do. And they're going to pat you in the back and say, thank you, good job. But you still have to go home to your spouse or go home to your family and say, I don't have a job anymore. I did everything that I could. Then the third thing is I would really consider whether what you're selling is something that you even care about, or is it just income for you, or is it just revenue for you? And if it's not something that you truly believe in, you're not going to do very well. So I've seen salespeople, especially in the tech space, They really don't even understand it. They really don't like it, but they have good commissions. But ultimately, they don't last very long in that space because it's not something that they feel not just passionate about, but it's not even something that they really care about. So I would look at, from a sales standpoint, this is just a game, really, when you really think about it. Don't take any of this stuff too seriously, meaning that ultimately the big corporations don't necessarily care about the people because they can replace them. But your job as an individual is to provide for yourself and your family. That may not include being at that same corporation tomorrow or a year from now. Same thing with business owners. Clients are fickle, and clients can blow in the wind in an unbelievable fashion. And we have to stand firm in what our goals are and not be swayed to start providing solutions that they want us to as one-offs, as opposed to solutions that we know moving forward are going to get us toward our goal.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It's a continuation of the hurricane. You basically, working on the principle that something might go wrong. You might lose your job. You might miss the commission. You might lose that client. And so preparing for that, while also, I love that idea of continuing to shoot for that destination to make that progress, and caring about what you sell. Right, as a seller, obviously that makes the job easier because you have a purpose, right? How does that make the pain worse if you're rejected selling something you care about, or does it make it easier because you're more aligned with it? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Alistair. And here's what I would say. No matter how tough you are, when you go try to make a sale and people don't buy from you, that's difficult. That's hard. Sometimes it can feel and be very personal, especially if you're selling a service that you're delivering. It's a very difficult feeling. But here's the thing that I would say is nothing in life is easy. And that pain from a rejection, as opposed to allowing it to cripple you, take a step back and understand that as much as it feels personal, it's not personal. It really isn't. It's just a situation where the person you're selling to either doesn't want that service today or that product, or they don't need it, or they don't have the budget for it. And that's not something that we have to take so personally that we have to go sit in a corner and cry about it. I look at every single time I've been rejected in life, and you know what it really does for me is it makes me even more determined to get to that goal. Because especially if you have a financial goal, the thought is, you know what, I'm going to work even harder, because when I hit this financial goal that I have, I'm not going to have to worry about the rejection as much, because again, I would have built up savings, or I would be in a different financial position where I don't need every single potential customer that's in front of me. So I look at it and say, that individual that rejected me does not stop me from meeting my goal. But it is very personal. It feels personal. It definitely feels personal. But I just decide to take those situations and ball them up into a little piece of paper and burn them, and use that as fuel for this big fire that I have inside of me to continue and to prove them wrong. You want to make sure the best, not revenge, I don't like that word, but the best thing that you can do when you get rejected is to go out and get a sale, to go out and get another win. So instead of focusing on that one failure, that one missed opportunity, go out and get 2 or 3 more. And that will help move you past the pain, because it's always better to have a win than it is to have a loss. But if we focus our time on the losses, we'll never get ahead. A friend of mine in Chicago, John Rogers, who owns Aerial Capital Management, excellent firm. He always had this saying. And that saying was, people spend too much time admiring the problem. And we shouldn't admire the problem of fear. We shouldn't admire the challenge of failure. We should acknowledge it for what it is and spend the majority of our time on the solutions, selling, getting past and reaching our goals and getting more sales.
It rings very true for me as somebody who's, lost accounts, not won business, been made redundant. These feel, at the time, they feel unbelievably personal. It's just about me. Obviously, it wasn't, right? It was about business, but they feel super personal. And I think that ability to move from observing, admiring, or observing the pain to start with, and then trying not to spend too long before moving into a positive phase and trying to sell more. Or what would be your tips? How can you do it? Because obviously the quicker one can do that, the better. What would be how do you do that? How do you change? How do you turn it into a gift? How do you switch from it being a negative thing? How do you move quickly between those two phases? How could others do that?
Absolutely. I allow myself to have the feelings that I have. That could be after, you mentioned before, losing people in your life, having business failures, personal challenges. I will allow myself as a human being to very much feel what I feel, to feel the loss, to feel the sense of not hopelessness, but the sense of, wow, this is reality. I thought that I was going to have that deal. We thought that the project was going to go through, but it didn't. And I allow myself to sit in that for a second, typically no more than a day. And that's very refreshing because it makes you less robotic. But then what I do is, once you feel that pain, the next day, I'm all about moving forward and trying to find a way to never experience that level of pain again in the future. You can't do it with relationships, especially when you bury people who you love. But in business, you have an opportunity every single day. In sales, every single day, you have a new opportunity to take that pain and to use it as energy. For example, if you lose a deal today, the worst thing you can do is just sit around and complain about it, because that momentum will stay with you for a few days or maybe even a few weeks of sitting there doing nothing to change your circumstances. But if you allow yourself the next day to make even more sales calls, to connect with even more prospective clients, to seek out new clients, new relationships, you have that positive energy. After a couple of days, the energy that you'll forget about that loss. You're going to forget about that setback because your mind has shifted. And when your mind shifts, your body will follow. If your mind is saying, I'm going to win, I'm going to win, I'm going to make more calls, you're not going to be tired. You're not going to be worn out. You're not going to have low energy. Your body is going to be ready to move forward. Because here's the reality. If you're faced with the loss in sales, if you're not making your number, you're going to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning for one reason or the other. And here's typically the two reasons that we wake up as entrepreneurs at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, is out of the pain of not making our numbers, not getting those deals. Or we wake up for the excitement for the sun to rise so that we can focus in on the new opportunities. So no matter what, I'll look at things in a different way. It's painful. It's more painful for me to not take action than it is to take action. I'll make 50, 60 calls, no problem, because I know that that's going to lead to a positive outcome, whether it's today or a month from now. I can sit back at home in a corner and complain about the situation. And here's the thing, Alistair, that it's not going to change anything. It's not going to change one thing. And we have to avoid sitting in that pain and being paralyzed by fear. Oh my goodness, I lost this one. If I make calls tomorrow, I may have the same outcome. Well, you're absolutely right. You're going to have the same outcome if you don't do anything. But in sales and in business, every single day, every single morning, this is probably one of the only industries that I know of, one of the only career fields or paths that I know of, that every single day you can wake up and literally change your future. It's a clear whiteboard. It's a clear sheet of paper every single morning for you to go and have a very successful day, no matter what happened yesterday. And that's powerful. If you really buy into that notion that every single morning you can control your destiny if you decide to take massive action toward your goal. Take 3 to 5 steps every day. Make more calls, send more emails. You have an absolute control over that. And that's powerful.
You mentioned a couple times that this concept of a day, and I think this is very powerful, isn't it? You know, you might have had a bad day yesterday, you felt some pain, maybe you allow yourself a day to sit in that pain like you talk about, but one day at a time. If you had a shocker yesterday, tomorrow can be a better day, you know, and that is a beautiful thing about that 24-hour cycle. So that rings true for me as well, that, you know, we were talking before the call about that early morning wake up, that time in the morning. There is an opportunity when the day starts anew for a new focus. And I think that's a really interesting takeaway, that as I've heard you say repeatedly on other calls and other recordings, you know, if it's bad, this too shall pass. Tomorrow is a fresh start and a fresh opportunity to get going. I think that's a really powerful grounding message, that a day is short and tomorrow can be different.
And to add on to that, you're exactly right. And to add on to that, for you and I and anybody listening, think about this. When you've gone through a failure or extreme amount of pain, whether it's work or personally, people are there for a very short period of time until it becomes a distraction from their own lives, their own goals. And if we don't make a change and if we don't take action ourselves to improve our situations, nobody is going to be there to help you. Your friends and family love you. Your colleagues tolerate you. However, they have their own goals and dreams. They have their own responsibilities. And they can't be with us 100% of the time taking care of us. So where does that leave us? It's for you and I to make sure that we take action, to make sure that we have a goal and a dream, and we take actions every day that lead to a plan and a strategy for achieving those goals. Nobody's coming to help us. As much as that sounds. I remember when I worked at IBM, when I first interned after college, and the salespeople, I was on the services team, but the salespeople who weren't making their numbers, Alistair, our manager, Kate Bunch, would make them come to the office 7 a.m. on a Monday morning and talk about the plan for the week and how they were going to improve numbers. Now, that's painful. To be up at 7 a.m. to go drive downtown Chicago and pay a lot of money to park just to avoid that pain. The other rep said, I don't want to be in that position. So what did they do? They went above and beyond and made way more calls and way more visits so they wouldn't have to endure the pain of sitting in an office as a grown person explaining to another person why they weren't achieving goals and their numbers. So a lot of times we have to do what we have to do to avoid pain as well, not just to endure it. I think that's the other thing, especially with sales. If you see another salesperson who's not making numbers, or if you know of another business that's struggling, one of the first things you want to do is you want to go in the opposite direction. You want to say, I don't want to deal with that pain. And you're going to get up earlier, you're going to stay up later at night, making sure that you don't go through that level of pain that you witness. So there's pain that we experience ourselves, but there's also pain that we are witnesses to. And in both cases, it takes action from us to do better, to strive for more.
Yeah, I. It feels like that sales director, the sales manager you're talking about in Chicago, that she was almost also helping them build that early morning habits. Those habits that you should be, avoiding that pain, and also that if things aren't going well, then she's doing for them maybe what they ought to have been doing for themselves, getting up early, getting on the phone early, chasing those deals.
Yeah. And another thing that it taught me, and I think this alludes back to a previous question you had, was some of those reps, I think most of them eventually wound up changing careers.
Okay.
And I think they discovered that they weren't as passionate about selling technology as the other people were, for whatever reason. And they wound up leaving that company. It was a pretty big company. They wound up leaving that company. They remained in sales, but if I remember correctly, they sold vastly different things than technology. And maybe that's where they should have been in the beginning.
Maybe. And for those people who may be on the right track, but they're struggling, what kind of impact have you seen coaching have for salespeople who may be missing targets and trying to avoid pain?
A phenomenal amount of help have I seen when people get coached or mentored. And I think the reason is especially with coaching, because a good coach is going to ask thought-provoking questions. They're going to bring out the person that they're coaching. They're going to bring out ideas, and they're going to bring out actionable items that person is telling them that they're going to do and they're going to take to improve their situation. And that's extremely powerful. I think the other thing, however, with coaching and mentoring is that it's really ultimately it's about why you're doing what you're doing. And the more important your why is, the more likely you are to succeed. Because if you have a why, like taking care of your family, putting kids through college, then you're going to work pretty hard, because it's not about you. It's not just about the commission and buying a vehicle and things of that nature or a nice suit. But now you have responsibilities, and you're aligning your work ethic with those responsibilities. And you will be amazed, Alistair, the salespeople were amazed when you realign your actions every day to a higher purpose other than just vanity's sake, which is buying more things, that you're going to work way harder, because now you also don't want to disappoint the people you love. And love is the most powerful fuel you can ever have. Behind that, probably a good second place, is pain. Pain is going to motivate you to a certain point to not experience that level of pain again. But coaching is so important to get an outsider to come in and clear through the noise that we have inside of ourselves about why we're not performing, how we should realign our goals and our strategy to accomplish those goals.
Yeah, thank you. Look, our time is almost up, coming to an end, and I think some of the things that jumped out for me were your hurricane analogy, and effectively us getting ready for pain. Assume that you're gonna miss that deal, that you might get made redundant. So keep that in the back of your mind. That preparation, I think, is key. I loved your idea of things being temporary, both allowing yourself to be in the pain for a while, for a day, but that is temporary, and tomorrow's another day, and that will pass. Trying not to take things personally. It's so hard, but cracking on with the cause. And I think ultimately for me, the thing that's come through is just to keep going towards your goals, your destination. Keep working in that direction, and that will ensure that if pain comes, it'll be less, and that if you care about those goals genuinely, whether that's kids through college or the software you're selling or whatever that is, I think keeping going, keeping driving towards your destination is the big thing that I'll take out to try and keep that pain away. So that's been some cracking insights, Tony. Thank you very much. Anybody who'd like to follow up with you or learn more about what you do as a specialist coach in this area, how can people get in touch with you?
Absolutely. They can hit my website, tonyrkitchens.com. And from there are social links at the bottom. And there is also an opportunity for a contact button. And I do, Alistair, this is going to be surprising, but I do respond to email and phone calls, which is probably a lost art with us business.
Well, I hope not. And if anybody, and I think the link, the URL for your website is in the chat now. And if anybody watching live or watching back on a recording wants to know more about how Revenue Coach demystifies the sales process and accelerates growth, they can head over to revenuecoach.ai. And there's the product. You can follow the QR code and the URL. So really all that's left for me to do is to thank Tony Kitchens, our fantastic guest. Thank you for your time and your insights, Tony.
Thank you very much, Addison. I really appreciate it. And for anybody who's listening, remember this. If you have a destination you're trying to get to and you're driving a car and it breaks down, you can take a bus. If the bus is not going your way, you can catch a plane. If you're really determined and you have to be there, you can walk. And the moral of that is don't quit. Whatever job or career or business you have today is simply a vehicle to drive you to a different destination. Focus on that destination and you'll get there by any means. You will be there for sure.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Tony. Thanks for being our expert in this session. We'll call it, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much. And goodbye, everybody.